Now let's take a look at the landing page for the Virus Factory in Schools resource. Scrolling through this page, you'll find a short introduction, you'll find an overview of the subject matter of the workshops, and you'll find links to resources. Here there's all of the printable materials and the workshop slides, which can be found on Zenodo, a link to the Citizen Science Project page on the Zooniverse website, and a link to the Zoonotes interface, which is used in the workshop to take a look behind the scenes at the data. If you haven't got a physical teacher resource pack and you'd like to register for one, you can scroll down and you can find this sign-up form here. Information about upcoming engagement, such as Q&A webinars and in-person activities at the Harwood campus, can also be found on this page. If you want to use an offline alternative to that Q&A component, which is in the workshop series, you can use some of our Ask a Scientist videos. These can be found on Vimeo and on YouTube. There's also a link to further resources that you might need in order to run these workshops effectively, including links to sign up for free microscope kits, information about the Science Capital teaching approach, which was used to design these workshops, and where to find other STEM ambassadors in your local area. There's also contact details for the entire team if you have any further questions. Let's take a look now at the electronic resources. The Citizen Science Project Virus Factory, which this resource is built around, can be accessed through this link here and also through the QR code shown on the Virus Factory cheat sheet. Clicking this link will take you to the Zooniverse webpage and to the Science Scribbler Virus Factory in Schools project. There's information about the project, about the scientists involved, about the workshop series, and an FAQ found on these About pages here. If you have questions that you want to ask the researchers, you can do so through the talk interface. To navigate to the classification interface, it's best to go to the home page and to scroll down. This allows you to pick from one of the two workflows. In the workshops, there are specific sections which focus on one activity versus the other, and you'll often run the picker workflow first and then the classifier workflow second. Just click on one of these links and you'll be taken to the classification interface. If it's your first time looking at this project, a tutorial will appear, and this has information about how to complete the task, how to use the interface, and what we're looking for. If you need extra help, you can use the field guide here, and it will show you examples of what the viruses look like in the dataset that we're looking at, and what edges of datasets look like, so you can understand the information that's being presented to you in the classification interface. Let's take a look at the second workflow. The classifier workflow, rather than showing a still image, will show two side-by-side GIFs, which are showing slices through the dataset, centered on a point that has been identified as potentially being a virus particle. Again, the tutorial will appear if you've not done this workflow before, and it will show information about how to do the task, what to look for, and everything else that you might need. One of the components of the workshop is being able to look at the data behind the scenes using the Zoonotes interface. If you're going to be running the workshop, it's important to open Zoonotes before you get your students to classify on the project. This allows the page to be open and to collect the images that have been classified by your students so that you can then look at them. The Zoonotes interface can be found by going to About, Education, and then scrolling down to Data Visualization. If we open Zoonotes in a new tab and copy this virus picker workflow code 16156, and put it here, you'll see the most recent classifications that have been submitted in this project. What you'll do here is you'll then leave this tab open, go back to the main page, and get your students to classify. We opened the picker workflow in Zoonotes, which means that we need to classify on the picker workflow through the Zooniverse page. Then all you have to do is get your students to contribute to the project. I'll do a couple here just to give you an idea of what that might look like, and then we can look at an example that we've actually classified on. So in this case, I don't think that there are any viruses, so I'm going to click Done. Here, there are several, and I'm going to use these point markers to place marks at the center of each virus. Once you're happy that you've contributed your submissions, you go to the Zoonotes page and you select one of these examples to look at every point that has been placed by all of the people who have contributed to this project. Let's take a look at this one. What you'll see here is points showing each individual mark that has been added by each person who has looked at this image. The yellow mark then shows where the computer has averaged those points together in a process called aggregation or consensus formation. If you click on these points here, they'll disappear and appear. So you can look at just the raw data, or you can look at just the averages. This allows you to show your students that, in fact, even though there are some marks that are maybe in the wrong place, or in places that not many people thought there was a virus, when you average them together, you end up with a really, really good result. You can also see information about how many people have classified this image and how many markings they made in the top right-hand corner here. Now let's take a look at the classifier workflow on the Zoonotes interface. Again, by going to the Education tab in the About section, you'll be able to find a link to the Zoonotes app. And then you can copy this code here, or you can find it on your cheat sheet, and you can then have a look and observe the classifications that have come through. Whereas in the picker workflow, you're looking at physical points that have been marked by everyone who's looked at the image. In this case, you're looking at a voting pool. You'll be able to look at the number of people who have contributed different answers to that survey question that was related to the two GIFs that you can see in the screen in front of you. These can be shown in a Q&A form or in a pie chart. What we can see here is that the consensus answer, or the greatest majority answer, is F. F being, there's nothing here, and I would agree with that. If we go back and pick another subject, we might find a different story. Here, though it's not centered, it does look like there is a virus particle in the top right corner of the image. And our 26 people who have voted on this image generally agree that it's DLP with membrane. That can again be shown in the chart. Finally, let's take a look at where we can download the resources on Zenodo. If you don't have a physical copy of the resource pack, you can sign up using this link on the landing page. But if you don't want a physical copy and you just want to print your own, you can click on either of these two hyperlinks to Zenodo. This will take you to the Science Scribbler Community Resources page, and you'll be able to scroll down and find the most recent version of this workshop series.